Today we're going to be covering some tips that should help you get some more kills in Rainbow Six Siege. I've narrowed it down to 4 key areas that we're going to be covering throughout this video, and you can skip to those areas using the chapters and the timeline below. I don't want to waste anyone's time, so let's get straight into this. The first thing we need to consider overall is that getting kills in Siege goes hand in hand with not dying yourself. As you might know, it's quite difficult to get kills when you yourself are dead, so it's important that we stay alive throughout the majority of the round if you want to maximize the kills that you're getting. With that being said, that leads us on to our first topic of the 4, positioning. Now, in case you don't know what that means by positioning, I'm referring to the placement of your character throughout the map. This is something that a lot of newer and lower ranked players don't really seem to grasp at first. They rightfully think that their aim and their crosshair placement might come first over where you place yourself on the map. But considering how complex this game is with all its destructibility and all of the different gadgets, positioning is arguably far more important than both of those two aspects. Being in the right place at the right time can completely change the tide of a round. Even if your gun skill and your crosshair placement are lacking, you can get the drop on enemies by just being in the right place. Now, obviously, the best places to position yourself are places where you can kill the enemy easily, but they can't kill you. And on a lot of the older maps that are quote-unquote solved, like Oregon and Clubhouse, a lot of those places have been discovered and will basically become common placements for players. Now, sitting in a common placement is fine, but you do also need to be aware that higher skilled players are going to know that someone is likely sat there and either pre-fire you or nade you or whatever happens. A good example of this is on Border. When defending the armory site, it's incredibly common for a Jaeger and someone with a shield to defend the main wall by having a shield placed right on the corner next to the bomb. It's a very powerful position, and it has been for years, and it's great at delaying the attackers from pushing in and getting a plant off throughout the entire round, until that shield is gone. However, since it's such a common place for people to play, a common strategy for attackers right now is to instantly go down to the ventilation window and nade up to the ceiling where that shield would be. If you're lucky, you might get a player, but most of the time you will probably get both of the ADSs and the shield off immediately. And so positioning wise, at the start of a round, you're likely not going to want to be sat there unless you have someone defending the ventilation window from anyone nading through. Since ceiling nades are so common at the moment, being sat on any soft floor is basically always a risk as long as you're stood still. So standing still in Siege for very long isn't a very good thing to do. On the attacking side of things, you're going to be wanting to position yourself in places where defenders can't flank you as easily and get a kill on you before you even know that they're there. Sticking with Border will give you another example. If you've taken the top of these stairs and maybe you have an air jab or a claymore right at the top, then it's not advisable for you to, as an attacker, hold an angle on the 90 hallway from the top of the stairs, since anyone at the bottom of the stairs could get a kill on you and then run away before anyone else could refrag. Instead, you'd want to be holding up close to the door so they can't get an angle on you unless they push further up, and then you'll likely hear them. The final note on positioning that I have is that having an exit route is always advised. As a defender, if you're sat in a corner of sight and you get droned out, then you're going to likely want to reposition as quickly as possible. That's why maybe sitting close to a hatch that you could drop or a wall that you could make a rotate in is sometimes a pretty good idea. Moving on to our second aspect, we have peeking / crosshair placement. There's a lot of different mechanics and technicalities that go into the way that peeking works in this game, but the main thing you should be focusing on is exposing as little of yourself as possible. Since the bullets in this game come out of your character's face, the only way that you're ever going to get a kill round a corner is if your face is exposed. And obviously if your face is exposed, then you can die from a headshot. To get the basics out of the way, if you are peeking round a corner to the right, then you should lean right. Likewise, if you are peeking round a corner to the left, you should lean left. This way, hopefully, you will only be exposing your head and not your body, so you are a smaller target. To further help mitigate the risk of you dying when peeking, you can also quick peek, which can help you utilize something called peeker's advantage. This basically means that due to ping, in certain cases, you could get a kill on an enemy before you even render on their screen. It's a bit of a cheese mechanic and isn't really necessary in every rank, but as you get higher up, you will probably see more people doing it, and at that point, you should begin learning how to do it yourself. But at the same time, if your crosshair placement is good enough, then quick peeking might not be a necessity for you. So long as a player is stood flat on the ground, there are only 3 different heights that people can be at in this game, which is prone, crouched, and standing. Your crosshair placement should always be focusing on hitting the head so the gunfight can be over as quickly as possible. There are different sound cues that can help you figure out whether someone is crouched, stood, or prone, but a lot of the time it's going to rely on callouts from your teammates. Learning these different heights is basically as simple as just lining it up with your teammates or lining it up with yourself. Every operator is the same height in this game, and so if you aim straight ahead, then you will be at the same height as another character would be in the same position. Once you've got your peeking and crosshair placement down, you can begin to pre-fire in these certain positions. Like I mentioned before, more experienced players will begin to just pre-fire common angles, especially with this LMG meta that's currently going on. And so as you build up your knowledge of what these common angles and common positions to sit in are, then you can begin to pre-fire them and get some free kills along the way. It should also be noted that if you are repeatedly peeking the same enemy, then you're likely going to want to switch up what stance you're peeking at. Maybe crouch every once in a while, and maybe even prone. This should help throw off your opponent and let you get the kill on them. Before we move on to the next tip, I'd just like to quickly remind you that you could subscribe to this channel if you're enjoying the video. We are trying to hit 3k by the turn of the century, so that would help me out a lot. So thanks. Okay, so the third tip that we have here is understanding your sensitivity. Probably pretty obvious to say, but if you can't aim, then you're going to have a harder time getting kills than someone who can. And so that's why it's important to learn your sensitivity and stick with it. Changing your sensitivity around all the time is not going to help you learn it. What a lot of people like to do is ask a lot of streamers and pro players what their sensitivities are, and then use that. You can do that, but just don't change it every week. As far as learning your sensitivity goes, a common thing that a lot of people like to do is find 2 points on a map and then flick between the two of them to see how well your sensitivity fits you. If you find yourself over flicking and so going past one of the objects, then it's likely that your sensitivity is too high, and likewise if you find yourself falling short, then your sensitivity is probably too slow. Once you've fine-tuned those enough and you've found one that works for you, then it just comes down to sticking with it, running a few T-hunts, running a few death matches, and basically just playing games with it. It might sound like a cliche, but literally if you just practice with your sensitivity, then you will get better with time. And like I said before, that practice is kind of negated when you're switching your sensitivity every 5 minutes. So just try and find one and then fine tune it to your ability. Moving on to the final tip of this video, we have outsmarting. Now I've purposely left that quite vague because it is a very broad topic. It's basically learning and understanding the different complexities of this game that other players might not understand. An example off the top of my head would be understanding that different floors make different sounds when you walk on them, and so you can tell at what point in a room someone is in if they sound like they're either walking on concrete or walking on top. And then you can get a free kill based off of that information. That's obviously a very specific example, but there are many instances like that where you can get free kills based off of just knowing various things about the game. Now a lot of these things will come with time mainly, and there's not really that many ways to accelerate your learning of these things. Although if you do want to learn 30 tips in 5 minutes, then boy do I have the video for you. You can find it in the link in the description or in the top right of your screen right now. Overall, outsmarting your opponent is the only way that you're going to get kills if you can't out-aim them. And so as far as building up your knowledge of Siege goes, basically just take every death as a learning experience. Dissect how you died, dissect the situations that led up to how you died, and then don't let it happen to you again. Maybe you heard something that you could have played off of, maybe you positioned yourself poorly, maybe you could have flanked a little bit earlier in the round. All sorts of stuff like that can help you change the tide of rounds and help you, at the end of the day, get more kills. But that is just about gonna do it for everything that I have in this video. If you did go on to enjoy it, then a like on the video and a subscribe to the channel would be greatly appreciated as always. As I mentioned earlier, I have a tip video where I go over 30 tips in 5 minutes for Rainbow Six Siege. If you want to go and check that out, you can see it on screen right now, or like I said, link in the description. Thanks for watching the video, and I will catch you in the next one.